Hello. Where was I born? I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1930 on the 22nd of June. That's about it. It was a bright sunny day. What kind of hardships or tragedies did my family experience? Well, we had a tragedy. My mother died when I was 3.5 years old. And my father remarried. And then my father died when I was 9.5 years old.
What did they die of?
My sicknesses. My mother died of, she died of a strep throat and an asthma attack. My father had a gallbladder operation that didn't go well. So I went to live with an aunt and uncle. My brother and I, Frank, and I went to live with an aunt and uncle. And our two grandmothers lived immediately next door. And we lived in a hotel, and we had an apartment, and their apartment was right next to ours. I said, we have any special ways of celebrating holidays? Well, I had an aunt and uncle and two cousins that lived a block away, and so the whole family would always get together for Passover, Thanksgiving, special holidays. So the only way we celebrated them primarily was by eating. We did celebrate Christmas. We used to have a Christmas tree when I was young. We used to hang up our stockings, just like any good Gentile family. And you would get gifts from Santa Claus, but that soon died out after we were 10, 11 years old.
Did you do it to, did you guys have a Christmas tree because everybody else had Christmas trees?
Because in those days, Jews were more assimilated, or trying to assimilate.
Did you celebrate Hanukkah too?
Yes, we had Hanukkah, but it wasn't like it is when you got a present every night. I don't think we got that.
But you lit the candles.
I really don't remember getting many presents at Hanukkah, but we got presents at Christmas.
Okay.
You want some memories of my grandparents?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't know my maternal grandfather. He died before I was born. And but I knew my paternal grandfather, and I lived. After my mother died, my father, my brother, and I moved in and lived with my grandmother and grandfather and my Aunt Blanche. And we lived with them for about 2 or 3 years until my father remarried. Oh, I got a lot. My grandfather was a great guy. He was one of the kids. He was always playing with us. Had some bad accidents. One time, 4th of July, he threw a firecracker and it fizzed and nothing happened, so he picked it up and put it in his pocket, and it went off.
Oh my gosh.
He got badly burned. My grandmother was real head of the family, kept everyone together kind of person.
What did Grandma Blanche do? What was her job? Did she ever work outside the home?
Grandma Blanche? Yeah, she worked. She was single when we lived with her and my grandparents. So she had a job, and they helped support each other. And it used to embarrass her because she worked for Kotex.
Oh.
And she used to hate to say it, but she was an office person for Kotex down in the Palm Olive building in Chicago. After my father died and my brother and I moved in with them, after about 6 months she quit working and became a stay-at-home mother. When and how did I decide to marry? Well, I guess we got married in 1953. I was out of school a year. We got married, I'm sure you know, 2 days after your grandmother graduated from college.
What did you major in college?
I majored in theater and economics, business. I had 2 majors. I majored in theater because it was nice and easy and fun. But then I decided I better learn something, so I went into business. when and how did you decide to get married? Well, I don't know. We were just dating, and one thing led to another. Your grandmother was 8 months pregnant. And we go, no.
No.
Okay. And we got married. Was your wedding like? We had a very nice wedding. We had it, the temple had just built a new sanctuary. Your mother was very proud that we were supposed to be the first one married there. Because somebody I knew jumped in ahead of us. And they got married a couple of days before we did. Our wedding was very nice. It was at a wedding at the temple, and then we went down to the hotel and had dinner.
In Chicago or Ohio?
In Dayton, Ohio. What was originally the most difficult for you about being married? Well, I don't think it was ever difficult. I mean, when you have two people living together like that, they occasionally have arguments. And after your grandmother would hit me a few times, I would see things our way. And we would do it her way. We really didn't have it wasn't difficult. I didn't make as much money in those days as I wanted to. So that was the hardest part. But it wasn't that bad either.
Did the Depression affect your family the way it affected Grandma's family?
How did it affect Grandma's?
She said that their house got foreclosed on because they couldn't.
Oh no, that was the Depression.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, we never had those kind of financial difficulties. No, her family had some hard time during the Depression. Mine did not. I lived in Hyde Park at the University of Chicago, which was a fabulous neighborhood to grow up in. Intellectually, it's just a great place to grow up. We were a block from the Museum of Science and Industry and 3 blocks from Lake Michigan.
Wow.
And we frequented both of them. And the parks in Chicago were great in those days. I guess they still are. And
did you go sailing on Lake Michigan?
no, didn't go sailing in those days.
Okay. When did you start sailing?
Hmm?
When did you start going sailing?
Oh, not till, I would guess 1970. No, later than that. About 72, 71.
Okay.
We bought a little sailboat. It was great. We loved it.
Where did you go sailing? What lakes?
Lake Michigan.
You did on Lake. Okay.
But Alan had gone sailing on near Washington, D.C. and on some big trips, and so I assumed he knew something about it. And we bought the sailboat, but it was a small sailboat and very easy to handle. One of some of the things I enjoyed as a kid, I went to a very fine acting school, very well known. The school placed most of the child actors in the theaters in Chicago and on radio. I used to do some radio work. I used to have auditions on Friday nights, and we would go down there and audition to get on a program on Saturday. That was one of my favorite things to do. Other things I did as an adult, you already know that we went on lots of picnics as a family, and of course our summer vacations in Wisconsin and all were wonderful. What are some of my talents? I'm very smart. I discovered that by doing crossword puzzles. How my talents affected my life? I ain't got no talent.
You didn't have talent in the theater for acting?
Yeah, I didn't like acting as well as I liked directing. And when I went to college, I really majored in directing. And I really felt I was very good at it. But I also recognized the fact that the competition is impossible. And being very good at it is one thing, being the best is something else. And only the best get anywhere. So I decided very early on that I was not going to do any of that. As a young adult, I had a million jobs as a kid. I really did. I delivered dry cleaning. I started by building a little wagon and meeting people outside the Jewel grocery store and offering to carry their packages home. Worked for a company that addressed envelopes, and I worked for an uncle who had a printing business. I had so many jobs. I worked in drugstores. One of the first drugstores I worked in was owned by an uncle. And the first day I went to work was after Sunday school. I went in about 1 o'clock, and he said, go behind the soda fountain and work there. So a kid came in, and he wanted an ice cream cone. So I made him an ice cream cone. I mean, I had the scoop and the cones and nothing to it. The kid left, and my uncle came out roaring mad. He says, you know you gave that kid a gallon of ice cream, you squeezed it all into that cone. And he said, much too much. So I said, okay, I learned. A few minutes later, a kid came in and bought something with a silver dollar. In those days, we had silver dollars. I really didn't know anything about silver dollars. So I figured it was a $50, and I gave him change. My uncle came over, he looked in the cash register, he says, you gotta go find that kid and give him the rest of his money. I said, I don't know where he is. He said, you walk over this neighborhood until you find him and give him this change. I don't remember the outcome. But I had so many jobs. Yeah. Never got fired from them. Just kept upgrading myself and enjoying them. What did I do for a career? Well, I was supposed to go in the mortgage loan business. Through complications, that didn't work out, and I was only in it for about 6 or 8 months. And I had to get out. And I had to find something to do, and I really didn't know what to do. I was 22 years old, 23 years old. And I really had no experience. So I went in the life insurance business, and I hated it. And I was in it for 15, 16 years. But after about a year, I started selling automobile and fire insurance and household insurance, homeowners. I wasn't allowed to, the company wouldn't allow it, but I did it anyway. And soon I had more people coming to the insurance counter to pay my premiums than the life insurance people had. So I had to get out and go into an office, my own office. And I was in that business for 16 years. Then I had a heart attack. And my brother was very concerned, and my brother was very busy in the special alloy business, scrap business. And he kept insisting I come work with him because he couldn't handle it himself. He had too much business and he couldn't trust anybody the way he could trust me. So I went to Chicago and went to work there for him. And we had a problem. So not between us, but there was a problem. And so after, I think 9 months, I had to leave and I had to find something else to do. And I looked around for weeks. The only time I was really unemployed where it was important. And it lasted, I don't know, a month, 2 months. And I saw a blind ad in the paper about the printing business. And I called. And I'll never forget, I called this guy, it was a Sunday night. I talked to him for about 45 minutes. And I hung up and I went in and I told your grandmother we're going in the printing business. We did. We opened the Sir Speedy franchise. I'll tell you the truth, they had a school that you went to before you opened in California, and I went to the school and I went into a panic. I said, there's no way I'm going to make a living with this business because the prices are so cheap. And it's just impossible to make a living. And I got very friendly with the instructor and the guy who ran the school, and I told him this. 3 days after I opened, I called him and told him, and I used to say to him, I'll never do $100 a day. And I called him, I said, we just did $150. Third day, second day. And it took off from there. And we never looked back. And the business provided an excellent living.
What kind of things did you guys print at Sir Speedy?
Well, we could print anything, letterheads, envelopes, menus, business letters, brochures, newsletters, programs. The first year was an election year. McGovern was running for president, and his offices were 2 blocks away. and they became a very big customer. They kept coming in. And I had a problem with them because they're known that political campaigns don't pay their bills. So I had a rule with them that everything was to be cash on the barrelhead. And they didn't like it, but they did it. And because we could provide service, great service, because of them, that was one of the reasons we took off so well. It was a big customer. And after the election, by that time we had developed a number of good customers, and we had a good business, a very good business. We kept it for, 12 years, I think. I wanted to give it away to somebody, but they didn't want it. They thought we worked too hard, but we didn't. We didn't work nearly as hard as they thought we did, and we were making big, big money, but they didn't want it. So that was my career. And I retired when I was 53 years old, and haven't stopped playing since then. Describe the birth of my children. They were hard. They were, oh God, I suffered. I yelled and screamed. It was terrible. But they got born. What were they like when they were young? They wet their pants a lot and ate a lot of food. They still do. Of course, our one son was killed when he was, I think, 22 or 23 years old, and that was a blow to us. But we had two wonderful girls, and we did very well. What relationship were each other and you like when they were young? We had a good relationship. Did a lot of things together. Our son played football. He was the smallest kid on the field. And we would go watch him get banged around. It was terrible. The girls, Susie was prone to accidents. And I kept telling her she's all right, and she wasn't. And what family traditions do we try to establish? Being together. I always felt we had a good family relationship. What are 5 significant events? Explain the effects. Well, the significant events were the death of my mother, and the death of my father, the death of our son. When I was 3 days after I graduated from high school, I went to Indiana with a couple fellows just for a weekend, and we went horseback riding. And the cinch on my horse broke, and the saddle started falling off. And I saw a big rock coming right from my head, so I pushed off of the horse and I tightened my body, and when I did, I broke a vertebrae in my back. And so I went to the doctor, and he said, yeah, every time I sneezed, it was pollen season, every time I sneezed, I'd fall over. So we went to the doctor, and he says, yeah, you got a broken vertebrae, we're going to have to put you in a cast. So a couple of days later, I went down to the hospital, and they put me into a cast from my neck to my groin, a whole body cast. And this was around the 25th of June, and it was hot. So I got a lot of sympathy from Blanche and Sam. They said, well, we're going on vacation. We'll see you in 3 weeks. Goodbye. So I was left alone with my grandmother. My 2 grandmothers lived together, or maybe I did say that. So it was a hot summer in that cast. And they took it off finally late July, early August, and put me in just a brace. And that's when I went to school. I went away to school. And my roommate was from Chicago, and he had a Crosby car, which was just a little car. And he said, we will drive to school. I said, fine. So he came with his car, and we loaded it up, and it took up most of the space. And then I tried to get in, and every time I bent over to get in that car, I would snap the steel brace in my back. And must have happened about 5 times. I had that brace on for 6 months, and I'd have to keep going back to Chicago to get the brace remade. Life lessons that I've learned, they'll have to learn them I'm not going to pass them on. They got to learn them for themselves.
Okay.
You get knocked around, and you get up and start over again. What would I do? What would I change? I would change not having been an orphan, still having had a father and mother. My aunt and uncle were wonderful people, and they were fabulous. They really took care of us, but it wasn't a father and mother. And the greatest satisfaction in my life was raising my kids the way I do. The fact that Gloria and I have provided for 6 college educations at private schools without anybody having to borrow any money was a great satisfaction to me. And I was always so happy that my grandchildren never had to have college loans. How has the world changed since I was young? My God. Television. I was on one of the first television programs, dramatic shows, broadcast in Chicago, studios at WK. Anyway, that's when I was in this acting school. And we went down and we did the show, and my Aunt Blanche came down, and the parents would come down to watch the show in another room. This was 1941, I guess, and they had never seen television. And so they would watch it on the TV screen and watch the show. And when it was over, my aunt said to me, you know, you weren't on the screen much of the time, you were always off of it. How has the world changed? Oh my God, aviation, computers, communication, it's unbelievable what we've seen. Everybody knows about the changes since the 30s to now. Primarily, communication, I think, is the biggest thing. My brother was in the Army, but he never went overseas. He was the only one during World War II. I didn't have to go in the Korean War because of my back and my flat feet and my eyesight and my asthma. And God knew. Anyway, I went down to going in to take my physical, and they threw me out in 5 minutes. It was very nice. Did I support or oppose the war in Vietnam? I guess I believed most of the information that came out of Washington and the domino theory. And I didn't express it. How did I express it? I didn't march or wave flags.
Did you ever, for anything, join in a protest like that?
Never joined a protest. I was in ROTC in high school, but that was primarily so I wouldn't have to go to gym. And when I graduated, I was the lowest ranked member of the ROTC.
Did you play sports in high school, or did you ever play sports?
No, I went out for football, and the cleats hurt my feet, and it lasted about 5 days, and I quit. But I had a lot of activities in high school. I was an editor of the yearbook, which I enjoyed thoroughly. I was a movie operator. It just looked like fun, and when you had a free class, they would tell you to go run a movie for somebody. And when I went away to college, everybody was working in those days for 75 cents a dollar, $1.50 an hour. And I saw a notice they wanted movie operators. So I signed up, and I think I was getting $4 or $5 an hour.
Wow.
It was the highest paid job on campus. And I made out like a thief. It was great.
Did you ever play an instrument?
Never played a kazoo. No, I never.
Did you
sing? Cub
sing?
Scouts. I didn't go on to Boy Scouts. And I tried to play the bugle in the ROTC so I wouldn't have to march. But I was pretty sour, so that didn't work. So they made me something else, and I didn't do that well. That's why I graduated the lowest rank. We had, I don't know, maybe 50 or 100 guys, maybe more, in our graduating class from ROTC, and I was the lowest rank there. I was very proud of that.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Hyde Park High School, which was a great school. It was in a good economic area. And we had fabulous teachers. I had teachers who taught my uncle 30 years before.
Wow.
I can even give you their names now. We had one who was, whenever we had a fire drill, she was on the first floor. She would open the windows and tell us to go out the windows, don't go out the house. She was crazy. And so when I was in high school, they used to have fraternities and sororities, and they would have big dances, formal dances. They would go together with a school from the other side of town, and we used to go to those all the time. It was a great social life.
Were you in a fraternity in college?
No, I was not.
Grandma was in a sorority, wasn't she?
Huh?
Grandma was in a sorority, right?
She was in a sorority in high school and in college, both. But in college, we didn't have any Jewish fraternities. It was a small school. And really I was discouraged by my folks from joining a fraternity. Now you want to know my first contact with inventions? Well, I told you about television. The first TV was, I was working in Dayton for an uncle and staying with him, I think, and in the summer. And this was 1950, 51, and they bought a TV, a big screen, as big as they came in those days. And everybody would come watch it. I'll never forget one time we're watching Gloria came over to watch, the power went off. And my aunt said, "Who shut out the TV?" And from then on it became a family joke, who shot the TV out? So they, like I say, they bought their TV in 1950 or 51. When Gloria and I got married, we bought one immediately. I said, we didn't have much money, so I said, I want a couch and a TV. And that's what we got, but we got a lot more than that because I had a connection with somebody and we were able to furnish our house through a wholesaler. And that's the story of my life.
Is there anything else you want to tell me?
Well, no, I don't think so. I took a lot of pride in my grandchildren. Thank God we never had a serious problem with them other than a couple of health issues. I was always very proud that they didn't get arrested too many times and didn't smoke too much grass.
Tell me about smoking pot with Uncle Alan.
About who?
Smoking pot with Uncle Alan.
Oh, you want to know that story?
Yeah.
First of all, my aunt and uncle were swingers. They used to do they used to gamble, go to the racetrack. Well, that was what it amounted, that was all. But they enjoyed that, and they could afford it. And they had a very good friend who was a dentist. His name was Joe Hirsch. And one day, Alan came home from college, and Joe Hirsch at Grandma Blanche had come over to the house. And so Joe Hirsch came over to the house to see her. And Joe Hirsch says to Alan, "Let's smoke some grass." And Alan says, "Huh?" He says, "Go upstairs and get me some grass and let's smoke it." And Alan hesitated, and finally he says, "Okay." And we knew he had smoked it. There was another story on that. And Alan came down with a cigarette, whatever you call it. And Grandma Blanche took a drag, and Joe Hirsch took a drag, and I took a drag. And your sister Susie was there, and she insisted that I got high, and to this day I say I did not get high. I took, I think, 1 or 2 drags on the thing. That was the whole story. And like I say, Grandma Blanche had some, so I used to say Alan turned his grandmother on. But it was nothing serious. It was a joke. So that's that. The other thing with grass, did Grandma tell you about when she found the grass in Alan's bed? Mm-mm. We had talked to our children about grass, narcotics, and said, "We know what your peers are doing, and if you're going to do something we want to know and we want to help you, you don't have to hide it from us." Alan hit it. He, one day, your mother was making his bed, and she went under it to dust or something, and there's a cover underneath the mattress on the bed. And she pulled the cover back, and she found the bag of weed. And she panicked. She said, "What am I going to do? What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, there's not much you can do. Don't worry about it, and we'll talk to him about it and make sure he doesn't get in trouble." So she had called me. I was at the shop working. And right after the phone call, the director of the temple came in with some work for me to do. And he was a child psychologist and worked with children, did all kinds of things. So I said, "I'm all upset." He said, "Why are you upset?" I said, "Because Gloria just found some grass in Alan's bedroom. What should I do?" He says, "Well, the first thing you should do is tell him to make sure he gets good stuff, because there's bad Mexican grass going around and he can get sick. And other than that, there's nothing you can do." Went home that night and we talked to him about it, and we had an understanding. I mean, he wasn't going to go off crazy, and if he was going to smoke it with his friends on a weekend or something, can't stop it. It's a peer problem. And he did. And then he, later on when he went away to school, according to his sister Susan, he did a lot of it. I didn't think so, but he did very well in college, he did well in undergraduate school, and he did well in law school, and the grass didn't bother him. So that's the story of that.
Are there any other funny stories?
Oh, not that I can think of. One of the best things was when he was at undergraduate school, and they had this dog, this runt, and the vet was going to put him to sleep, to sleep, because he said he's probably got brain damage, unless somebody wants him.
Was that Poco?
So Alan said, "I'll take him." Well, the dog was always a runt, which was not real small, but it was a golden, so it never reached full size. Had no brain damage, and was a fabulous dog. We trained him pretty good. He lived with us for a while, and then when Alan graduated, he went to Europe, and he said, "Don't give her away until I leave." So as soon as he left, we tried to give her away, but anybody who called, Gloria would say, "Do you live on a farm? Do you have 10 acres? Do you have children to play with? Do you have this? Yeah." They'd say no, and then she said, "Then forget it." "Oh, a fenced-in yard." She said, "Forget it, you don't want this dog." So we kept him. And he used to go to work with us all the time. Customers used to love him. We had one customer who used to come in every Christmas and bring him dog cookies. And then for a while he lived with Debbie, and then he lived with the Jennings, and he finally wound up pretty much with the Jennings. And of course, they had 2 children, so it was a good fit. Other things I got, my life was full of marvelous adventures, but I can't tell you. And that's the story of my life. Okay. Goodbye.